Hey there, welcome over here to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be showing you 5 new sheet pan meals. And if you're not familiar with sheet pan meals, it's seriously one of my favorite ways to cook, but you just throw everything onto one sheet pan, stick it into the oven to bake, and when it comes out, your dinner is pretty much ready to serve. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's go get to cooking. We're kicking today off with my all-time favorite seasoned chicken with lemon and asparagus. So to begin, we are going to add all of the seasonings into this little bowl. It's just 1.5 teaspoons of paprika, a teaspoon of dried oregano, 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder and onion powder, and then 1/2 teaspoon of salt and pepper. Just mix all of these seasonings together, and that is pretty much it. Now over to my sheet pan, I did line it with some aluminum foil, or you could use parchment paper. I added my 4 large boneless, skinless chicken thighs that I trimmed. You could, of course, use more or less chicken depending on your preference. And then I added 2 tablespoons of olive oil to the top, and then I sprinkled the seasoning on both sides. Now it's time to add our asparagus. This is a little over 1 pound of asparagus that I trimmed. Of course, if you don't care for asparagus, you could use any other vegetable you like. And now I'm adding the juice from 1 lemon all over the top of the chicken and the asparagus. After that, go ahead and add your 4 tablespoons of butter that you sliced thinly all over the top of the asparagus. And then this will bake on 425 degrees for 13 minutes, and then flip the chicken and then continue to cook it for an additional 13 minutes or until your chicken's cooked through. Here's my plate of food. The chicken was so juicy and tender. If you don't typically cook with chicken thighs, I totally suggest you doing it. Chicken thighs are so budget friendly, juicy, and delicious. Now we're making this kielbasa with pierogies, and this was my first time ever making pierogies. I am so excited to share how they turned out with you. So to begin, I am cutting my 14 ounces of kielbasa up into smaller pieces like this. Now for my vegetables, I'm slicing 1 red bell pepper, 1 yellow bell pepper, and 1 onion into smaller pieces. You could use more or less peppers depending on your preference. In this large bowl, after I added in our peppers and onions, I tossed in our kielbasa, and then it is time for our pierogies. I'm adding 20 of these frozen pierogies in. This is what the bag looks like if you're wondering. I just found them at the freezer section in my Walmart. They're almost like a dumpling filled with cheese. That's the best way I could describe them to you, but they are so good. You definitely want to try them. And then I added in 3 tablespoons of olive oil for the seasoning. Toss in 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and then 1/2 teaspoon of onion and garlic powder. Give this a really good stir. And this is why I love sheet pan meals. They seriously can't get any easier than this. So after I lined my sheet pan with aluminum foil, I tossed that mixture right in there, and then I spread it out as even as possible on my sheet pan. This went into a preheated oven to 400 degrees for 15 minutes. After those 15 minutes of baking, I removed it from the oven, and then I flipped everything over carefully, and then I continued to bake this in my oven for an additional 15 minutes or until the pierogies were nice and golden in color. Here's our dinner out of the oven, and this is my plate of food. I sprinkled the top of everything with fresh parsley, mainly to make it look pretty, but all of the bold flavors in this meal complement everything really nicely, and we were quite surprised on how much we enjoyed those pierogies. I am so glad I gave them a try. They are pretty good. Now we're making these Parmesan crusted chicken tenders with broccoli. So to my sheet pan, I'm adding 3 cups of fresh broccoli florets. Drizzle 2 tablespoons of olive oil over the top of them, and then sprinkle with a dash of salt and pepper. Mix this all together, and then set this sheet pan to the side. Now we're going to start on the chicken. So into this bowl right here, I cracked 1 egg, and then I added a tablespoon of water, whisk this together, and then for the panko breadcrumb mixture, I am using a large gallon-size Ziploc bag, or you could use a bowl, but I do like to use a bag just because it's easy for cleanup in the end. I'm adding 3/4 cup of plain panko breadcrumbs, and then add a 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. For the seasonings, add a teaspoon of dried oregano and a teaspoon of dried basil, and then go ahead and throw in a dash of garlic powder and onion powder, and then a dash of salt and pepper. Shake this all together. I have a pound of chicken tenderloins right here. First, I'm going to dip them in the egg mixture. You do want to make sure you drip off any of the excess egg mixture before you add it into the panko mixture. And then go ahead and toss it into the panko mixture, and then give this a really good shake to coat the chicken in the panko and the Parmesan. To the sheet pan that we placed our fresh broccoli on with our coated chicken, now go ahead and scatter them all around the sheet pan, and then with any of the excess panko and the Parmesan in the bag, I sprinkled it all over the top of the chicken. This baked on 425 degrees for about 10 minutes, and then I removed it from the oven. I flipped the chicken and tossed the broccoli around a little bit, and then continued to bake it for an additional 10 minutes or so, or until the chicken was cooked. Here's my plate of food. That chicken has a really nice crunchy crust on the outside, but it is perfectly juicy and cooked on the inside. It's also really nicely seasoned, and then the broccoli is nice and tender. My entire family loves this one. Now we're making this savory beef and broccoli. To begin, right here, I have about 2 pounds of flank steak. I'm going to cut the steak up into smaller cubes, just like this. You do want to make sure you cut the steak against the grain also. This will just help your steak become really nice and tender. Now we're going to work on the marinade. So in this bowl, I have about a tablespoon of minced garlic, and then I'm adding a tablespoon of ginger. I like to buy the ginger in the tube like that. It just makes my life easy. And then a 1/4 cup of fresh cilantro that I chopped, a 1/4 cup of low sodium soy sauce, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and then a dash of salt. Whisk this marinade all together. I placed the steak that we cut up earlier into this glass bowl. Now add half of the marinade that we just made up right in there, and give this a really good stir to coat the steak in the marinade. And then you are going to set this bowl to the side. On my sheet pan right here, go ahead and add your 3 cups of fresh broccoli florets, and then add your 2 cups of fresh white mushrooms, and then add the remainder of the marinade all over the top, and then give this a stir to coat the vegetables in the marinade. It's time to stir our steak in right with the vegetables, and then this baked on 425 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. And then I took it out of the oven, gave it a stir, and then I put it under the broiler for 2 minutes at a time until the steak was cooked to the way that I like it to be. Here's my plate of food. I served it over a bed of white rice. The steak was perfectly tender. Everything had amazing flavor. I do also want to mention to you that this recipe is fantastic if you want to meal prep it for lunches for the week or for dinners for the week. Now we're making this veggie and herb crusted chicken. So to begin, I am starting on my potatoes. I'm going to be quartering them. You do want to make sure you use the little potatoes, so red potatoes, gemstone potatoes, or golden potatoes, but don't use russet potatoes because russet potatoes will not cook properly. So after I'm finished with my potatoes, I'm going to work on the coating for the chicken. In this little bowl, I added a half a cup of mayonnaise and then add a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and then 2.5 tablespoons of this 1.5 ounce packet of core vegetable recipe mix. This has so much flavor in it. You will be shocked, I promise. Just do it, you won't regret it. And then stir this all together. It's time to add everything now to our sheet pan lined with parchment paper. So to one side, I added our potatoes. To the other side, add your 12 ounces of green beans that are trimmed. Next, drizzle your 2 tablespoons of olive oil over the top, and then add the remainder of the 1.5 ounce packet of the core vegetable recipe mix. Mix this all together to get the veggies coated in the oil and the seasoning. And then in the center of your sheet pan, you are going to be adding your 3 large chicken breasts. You do want to make sure you sliced your chicken breasts in half horizontally, so it will appear as like 6 chicken breasts now. This will help your chicken cook so much quicker in the oven. It will also make your chicken super tender. I love doing this with my chicken breasts. Now I'm sprinkling the top of the chicken with a dash of salt and pepper, and then you are going to be spreading the mixture that we made up all over the top of the chicken. This will bake in a preheated oven to 425 degrees for about 23 to 26 minutes, or until your chicken reaches 165 degrees internally. I cannot even begin to explain to you how phenomenal that chicken is. The coating on the chicken is perfect. It is so good. The vegetables are nice and tender. And then on the side, I just served it with some of this rice. I really like this quick and easy rice packet. It's really delicious. I hope you found a meal for yourself today, and I would really love to have you here. So go ahead and subscribe down below the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.